Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Recap, a guy's review, and let's get into it. Here's our review of last night's episode. We take notes, read them back to you. No edits, no jump cuts, just me, you guys. We get right into it. All right, the Bachelor has moved to Estonia. We start with Jesse and Zach talking, and Jesse goes, "Welcome to Estonia. You're out." Speaking as if Zach was in prison. But that's what a quarantine kind of feels like you're in prison and you did something wrong. And it's like, no, you just kissed a lot of women and you turned out to get a little bit of the old COVID-19s. Jesse starts by saying that Greer is asymptomatic but quarantining, so we don't really get to see Greer at all, which, by the way, is probably nice. She gets to hang out, room service, you know what I mean? Oh, wouldn't that be great? Katie says, cheers to the only negative thing this week being Zach's COVID test. And, of course, Kat's like, actually, hold my Tecate. We're going to have some negativity. She's about to be the center storyline of the drama. Charity gets the next one-on-one date, so we have Charity with the next one-on-one date. She was, of course, supposed to have it last week. She didn't get it because the COVID, rightfully deserved. Zach arrives, and then Kat steals Zach from the group for a quick chat. Then they smooch in the hallway. He gets some of her lip gloss on him, telltale signs of infidelity. And then Gabby analyzes the lip gloss, and she goes, whoopsie, that's not your, whatever, lip smacker. They're like smelling it. Like, this smells like cherry. Is this a cucumber melon? Then Zach awkwardly says goodbye to everyone else as he leaves for his date with Charity. And, of course, that just kicks off a different storm. We'll get into all of the details of that, my opinions on it, which, of course, I personally believe, my bias, that they're very centered and grounded in reality. I'm not going to say Kat's the worst person in the world, but also maybe Brooklyn went too far. But, we'll get into all of that. I think we're channeling all of our aggression in different places. But, all right, so Kat immediately gets it from all the other women. She immediately, all right, we'll get back to the Charity thing in a second, but Kat immediately gets it from all the other women. As soon as Charity walks out, Brooklyn says, not the time for that. Like, immediately, it's Charity's moment, and she, Kat ruined it. Kat says, that's for her to tell me, not you. And then it's like, oh boy, we get into it. Seems like everyone is on the same page that it was a low blow. And pretty much every alumni that talks about it goes, yeah, I pretty much crossed a line. I personally didn't think it was as bad, but of course, this was Charity's moment. And she also was supposed to have the one-on-one before, so it was kind of like, you've already had yours. What would you think if Charity swooped in to, give Zach a lap dance before your date? How would you feel? This is her time, not yours, that kind of deal. So Kat says Brooklyn is being aggressive and Kat feels attacked. And I wouldn't say Kat is attacked. They're just allowed to feel their feelings, guys. That's all they're doing is feeling their feelings. So we'll get into that. Charity gets the horse carriage treatment. Very nice. There they are in Estonia, 2 horsepower. They arrive to the wife carrying competition. Very nice, very nimble. Zach has a future in the wife carrying if he can land a wife. The only problem with wife carrying is that if you're a Bachelor contender, chances are you're not going to actually end up marrying the person. Statistically, your odds are very low that you're going to marry someone from the TV show. Hate to break it to you guys. Santa's real. Love on The Bachelor is not. Zach is nimble on his feet. Jesse, funniest part of the whole show for me was just Jesse watching from the crowd. He's probably like, they're like, yeah, Jesse, you don't have to show up for this. We don't need you. And he's like, well, I'm kind of bored. I guess I'll come. There's free coffee. Charity breaks down at dinner talking about her ex's infidelity. That was interesting. And she said he was I guess cheating on her with someone she knew. We didn't get into the specifics. Sounds horrible. Vicious cycle of manipulation. Charity says she is 100% falling for Zach. A beautiful date indeed. And I don't have all the details of this, but some people are calling out the fact that Zach related to Charity in the same way that Greer tried to relate to Zach, in that when someone tells you a story, using personal situations to relate to them. Empathy, it's called. But either way, that's a whole different storyline we'll get into on another day, probably. So back at the house, Brooklyn's spiraling. So let's see if we have any images from back at the house. That's Jess. Do we have one of Brooklyn? Here it is. Brooklyn is spiraling. She's still upset. Calls Kat selfish, classless, and disrespectful. Here's the thing. Brooklyn can be right, but at the same time, she's also trying to date the same guy. So any sort of objections that Brooklyn has to Kat's character are not fully, they're not fully met with, from a place of moral superiority. She's also in this mess. So Kat again says she feels attacked. Ariel tries to explain why everyone is upset, but Kat won't listen. Very interesting conversation. Ariel does a very good job of listening to Kat, but what we see here is Kat's inability to listen to Ariel. Kat really isn't able to see everyone else's side of things. She just continues to prosecute her defense here. So then the group date arrives. Jess hopes she isn't on the list. And of course she's called. She wanted a one-on-one. She breaks down, and then sad Jess, of course, breaks all of our hearts. And the truth is, people said, "Oh, not everyone gets a one-on-one." If you don't get the one-on-one by week 7, they're down. This episode, they go down to their final 7. If you don't get the one-on-one, statistically, it ain't looking good for you. So, anyway, she's pouting about that, and then of course, go back here. Or let's see, back over here. And then Brooklyn and Kat are now in an all-out war. They're fighting a warfare. Kat wanted to address the situation the next day before the group date, and Brooklyn goes, "You literally kissed a man before Charity's one-on-one." And then Kat says, "Well, we're all dating him." So big sister wives energy. And we actually had an interesting conversation last night when we had a caller call into the live stream to talk about polygamy on the show, and the idea that the show in some ways promotes polygamy, but the truth is the show promotes monogamy and traditional marriage as the end result of a situation where the women are all dating the same guy, but they don't have the luxury of dating other men. Does that make sense? So there are too many, I would say, controls in this situation to say that it's actually like a polyamorous, but I'd love to hear from an expert what level of polyamory this would fit into, because the reason why the show is successful is because there is this stealing of kisses. There are these these rules, and some have said, I think Susie had said, and we'll make another video on this, that all's fair in love and war. Is that what she said? Either way, the idea that there are no rules on The Bachelor, but there are consequences. So anyway, let's go to the group date here. So we have the group date. They have a healing witch, which at this point is like, cool. Do I believe for 1 second that Estonia has healing witches? No, I don't. Maybe they do. I just don't. I feel like they went to Amazon and tried to order a hocus pocus, and this is what showed up. So anyway, but either way, she's here to eliminate the negative vibes. She kind of reminds me of Carol Baskin. Doesn't she have Carol Baskin energy? Carol Baskin. Carol Baskin. Remember that song? Early pandemic days. Isn't it crazy to think that Tiger King was during the pandemic? It feels like a century ago. Brooklyn says there's not enough sage in the world to cleanse Kat. Evening portion of the group date, everyone is dressed beautifully. So they have this beautiful evening portion of the group date. I didn't cover this part, but of course Jess is spiraling. She's ruminating, and they do this thing where they're supposed to look into the flame of each other's soul, and then the flame goes out. That whole deal. I'm sure there's excuse me. I'm sure there's a, production assistant off camera, with a little, just blowing in through a straw, trying to get that thing to go out. All right. Katie asks Zach where he has been her whole life. And it's like, how did Katie slip under the radar? That's the biggest question. Katie's magnificent for Zach. Oh, right, there's sad Jess. So we'll go back to her. Zach tells Gabby he missed her a lot, and she is one of his strongest connections. He says he has butterflies with her. She says she goes to sleep smiling, that whole deal. Time for Zach and Jess to chat. Zach pulls Jess aside. Personally, I'm over-invested at this point. Do not harm Jess. Zach asks how Jess is feeling. Jess says she's a hopeless romantic and knows what she signed up for, but doesn't have much confidence. She says she was waiting for that one-on-one to open up more. Zach says this is news to him. He's like, what, you wanted a date, huh? Really? You wanted a private meal with me? What are you talking about? He's like, but I get to date you with a dozen other women. Isn't that fine? Doesn't that suffice? Zach is confused that Jess is upset and that she hasn't gotten a one-on-one. Then he says he isn't feeling that confident. So first he goes, I'm feeling really confident with her. And then as soon as she offers any sort of roadblock, he goes, I'm not really feeling that confident in this relationship. Jess says all she wanted was someone to fight for her. It's not pretty heartbreaking, actually. Zach says this was the last thing he could have expected with Jess. And it's like, look, my opinion, you didn't take her on a one-on-one for the first 7 weeks. She's not your top 7. Could he take her on a one-on-one in week 8 and it all work out? Yeah. But if he was planning on doing that, he should have just told her, hey, you're next. Calm down, kiss me, you're next. But that wasn't the case. Meanwhile, Zach starts to tear up after Jess leaves. Jess says it's crazy that he doesn't get this. And it does come into that conversation we had. Let me see if I have the story here. Someone had tweeted this last night. After watching Dave discuss Zach's behavior with a great therapist today, I'm seeing his knee-jerk reaction to being challenged, vulnerability, much different. And that's right. If you want to check out that conversation from February 27th on the podcast, Bachelor Rush Hour, you can hear my conversation with Dr. Diane Strakowski and the idea of why Zach may be acting the way he does. I mean, we're all just products of a greater design, and we can all be labeled into a very small amount of different personality types. And what is it about Zach's personality that's leading him to just dismiss women versus maybe, I don't know, relate to them a little bit more? I don't know. Either way, he tries to control the narrative here. Heads back inside to chat with the other women. Zach calls it a huge disconnect. And it's like, it is, but is it really a huge disconnect? I mean, you didn't pick her. She knew she wasn't picked, and she was done with being strung along. So he tells the ladies that he sent Jess home, and then ends the night with no rose giveth. No rose giveth, and then he takes Ariel on a sexy spa date, so we're going to barrel through this one. So there they are, flogging each other with leaves. A couple nudies enter the sauna to hang out with them. Look, I say embrace your God-given body. The fact that they kind of made this like a funny chuckle because they saw other people without their clothes on is so stupid and foolish, but whatever. Zach says he feels traumatized. It's like, come on, get out. Ariel says her theory is that the older a person is, the more likely they are to be naked in a sauna. Yeah, because they realize that these are your bodies, the only ones you're given. Be proud of it. And who cares? Saunas and hot tubs are meant for nudity. Get in there and go balls out. The nude couple follows Zach and Ariel into the hot tub. And then, look, I sort of blacked out for the next 20 minutes, to be completely honest. I don't know what happened. I was watching, but, did I get abducted? So, because nothing really went down. So then we have the cocktail party. Of course, Ariel gets a rose there. At a cocktail party, Charity asks to chat with Kat. Brooklyn is upset. She says Kat won't acknowledge what she did was wrong. Here's the deal. Brooklyn shouldn't have inserted herself so far into the Charity debacle. Let Charity fight her own fight. Kat shouldn't have done the kiss, and Brooklyn should have dropped it after initial reaction. It's like, you're not going to get an apology out of her. You're just going to come off like sort of unhinged. Not to say that Brooklyn didn't have the right intentions. I just think after the initial whatever, if she's not going to apologize, what are you going to do? Keep talking about this at the women tell all? It's like, she's dug her heels. You get to see where her moral compass is, and then you move on. Brooklyn asked Kat if she would have pulled that move on Jess, which is pretty interesting. I took that as Brooklyn asking Kat if she would make that move on Jess, as saying, did she make that move on Charity for racial reasons, or is it, did she mean Jess? And this is where it's tough to imply, because it's like, in that situation, I would ask Brooklyn to specifically say, what do you mean? Because I don't want to accuse Brooklyn of, igniting a race war when it might just be that Kat and Jess are friends, and that was the point. So anyway, rose ceremony, no rose for Allie. Allie gets sent home. And of course, like I saw here with this moving graphic, Kat says, I don't have time for this shit. And the truth is, you've got all the time in the world for it. And we're just getting started with the drama. Let me know what you think. The season's starting to pick up, but we've got a lot more content to get to regarding the reactions from some of the alumni and how they think Zach is handling it. A lot of criticism out there. Follow me on Instagram at @DNeals. Link in the comment section. I'm going to have my American Idol recap, actually, in today's Bachelor Rush Hour. I'm going to share my top 3 Bachelor songs from this Sunday night. I've been sort of talking about, top 3 songs from American Idol this Sunday night. I've been sharing some of my, what I like going on out there, because it's actually a pretty fun season. All right, but either way, leave your comments. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll be live at 10 a.m. this morning on patreon.com/Dave Neal. Bye, guys.